Nigeria today. And today, let's talk social justice. Today's World Day of Social Justice. It's a day that the United Nations set aside to raise awareness about the growing need for social justice in the world. But what is it? What is social justice? According to the UN, quote, we advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of economic status, gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, culture, or disability. End of quote. So the fight for social justice is a fight to ensure that every citizen has equal access to public opportunities and facilities, no matter how much money they have or don't have, no matter whether they are female or male, no matter whether they are a baby, an old person, or somewhere in between, no matter the color of their skin, no matter their place of origin, no matter what God they worship or don't worship, no matter whether they are physically disabled or not. Everybody should have access to the same opportunities and everybody should have the same rights. That's social justice. Now, here's today's big hard fact. The theme of this year's World Day of Social Justice is closing the inequalities gap to achieve social justice. Closing the inequalities gap to achieve social justice, closing inequalities. My God, that's a very tough issue. What the UN is saying is as long as there are inequalities in society, there will be a lot of social injustice. So part of what we're going to try and do on today's show, on today's segment of the Big Hard Fact, is look at the various inequalities that exist in our society here in Lagos and how they are affecting social justice. There's a lot to talk about, so we're going to try to go through as many as we can. And then we're going to look at what needs to be done to reduce these inequalities. Now, we're doing this because when you talk about a topic like social justice, it doesn't make sense to talk up, Abi. You have to talk about it in practical terms. You have to talk about whether or not it exists in people's day-to-day lives. So here on the Big Hard Fact today, let's look at social justice here in Lagos and Nigeria in general. Will they line up side by side? That's a question that we will answer eventually. Now, throughout the show, I'm going to need you to call me, right? And answer certain questions. What does social justice mean to you? Are there areas where you see a lack of social justice in Lagos, in Nigeria? These are questions I have. Now, you look at that theme, closing the inequalities gap to achieve social justice. And the first thing I have in my head is whose job is it to close the inequalities gap? And the answer to that is staring you in the face. It's government, federal government, state government, local government. Part of their job is to provide the resources and the avenues to ensure that children who are born today in inequality are able to erase that inequality by the time that they are my age. Is that what's happening today? Well, let's take a look. The very first way that government is supposed to close the inequalities gap is with education. We all know that a good education is expensive. You get what you pay for, garbage in, garbage out. If you want the best and the brightest to become teachers, you need to pay them competitive salaries. But quality education needs more than quality teachers. It needs equipment. And I don't mean just desks and blackboards. In this day and age, I mean computers, I mean tablets, I mean lab equipment, I mean internet access, a customized syllabus, carefully selected textbooks, and all of these things cost money. Somebody must pay for them. For the children from richer homes, it's not a problem. Their parents will pay. But what about the children from poorer homes? Only government should be counted on to pay for their education. That's why all over the world, the most developed nations all have very strong, free public education, at least at primary level. Most also have free public secondary education. Now, in Nigeria, state governments do provide free primary education, but let me ask the question, can the public education they provide match the private schools? Does it even come close? Does it? Some people will say, it doesn't matter. They will say public schools are good enough. They will say in the olden days, in the 60s, we went to primary school with just slates and sat on the floor, but we are successful. But this is not the 60s. This isn't the 20th century anymore. The children who are learning in classrooms without chairs are competing globally with children who are learning to code. I told you sometime last year that Singaporean children are learning AI, artificial intelligence. But we are saying it's good enough that some of our children have never used a tablet. How? How will they compete? How will the children of the poor ever close the inequality gap if they're not learning the same skills as the children of the rich? A lot of people are saying the children of the poor can make it if they're just determined. They point to that little girl in Ondo State that I told you about. Remember her? The one who was given a scholarship by the bank, whose ATM she was studying by? How many children can the banks give scholarships, no matter how hard they study? That girl was an exception. Why do we keep thinking exceptions are the rule? For every little girl studying under an ATM and getting a scholarship, I can show you 30 little girls begging on Freedom Way. I can show you thousands who finish primary school and cannot read. I can show you hundreds who are failing university aptitude tests and who are unemployable, all because government has not put enough money into providing free public education that is equal in quality to the private education that richer families can afford. UNESCO has recommended that government spends 26% of its budget on education. In Nigeria, this never happens. In Lagos, it's not happening either. If you combine the budget of the federal and state governments, education doesn't even get close to 26% year after year. And this underfunding of education is leading to an inequality in education and skills between the children of the rich and the poor. And that inequality is leading to an inequality in employment. So that means because government is not investing in education, the children of the poor are inheriting poverty. Why? Why is the government not investing enough in education? Is part of the problem that we, as Nigerians, as Lagosians, are quick to say that these very poor quality schools are good enough. Are we too easily satisfied? Are we too easily impressed? Now, I want us to talk solutions, so it's not enough to call me and rant and rave. I've already ranted for you. I want you to let me know how we can apply pressure on government to provide better public education. How do we do that? Seriously. Don't call me and say, this government is bad. Yes, we agree. Oh, this government is not doing anything. I've just spent the past 9 minutes telling you how, government is all of that. Right now, tell me and the government, because the government is listening, tell us how we apply pressure on the government to provide better public education. Because you see, that's where it all starts. Inequality, social injustice, now there they start from. How do we apply pressure on government to provide better public education? 012770993, 012771993, 012772993, and 012773993. Let me talk to Peter. Peter is our first caller. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Sandra. Good afternoon.
Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you very much. I think I want to take attention a little bit away from the government, because your question was, how do we put pressure on the government to do that? But today I want to say, how do we put pressure on ourselves as individuals, as our brothers keepers, our sisters keepers, to make sure that what the government cannot provide, we on our individual basis can provide.
No, that's not true. Peter, let me stop you there. And let me say to you that education, basic education, is the responsibility of government.
I agree.
When we say, what can we do for our neighbors, we are taking away from government what government should be doing.
Yeah, because you know why I say this is that you can see on your program over the years, like the study some man talk about more than 80 children in a classroom. I have seen a situation whereby it's like all that we are drawing the government's attention, the government is not paying attention.
So how do we get them to pay attention? That's my point, Peter. How do we get government to pay attention? The answer is not to outsource it. We've been outsourcing so much.
Can we protest peacefully? Will they allow us? Or can we write letters? Will they read the letters? We are now talking on the radio waves. Are they listening? Because Peter Monte is tired. I don't know which way we can approach the government. Maybe we have to pray and fast for them. Let heaven come down on them.
Praying and fasting is
because we have tried our bit.
Praying and fasting isn't the answer, Peter. Mr. Odafe, hello, welcome.
Yeah.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening. Yeah.
How do we put pressure on the government to provide public education, quality public education?
Now, I will start this way. Is it possible for us as the masses of Nigeria to put pressure on these people? I don't think we can.
Why don't you think we can?
Because they know that we, all the masses, are all. In fact, there's no good school anywhere in the country. They took their children to abroad to school.
Yes. We know all of that. They don't care. How do we get them to care? Because Mr. Odafe, you care. Peter just called me. He cares. I care. So how do three of us and the thousands of other people who are listening to me right now, how do all of us convert that care to action?
If we look at the spheres of everything that is happening, we find out that it is very difficult for us to get something from these people, from the government.
Is it?
Yes, it is very difficult.
Why?
The little basic amenity that these people can give to us, they are not. They can't give it to us. Rather, they will want to gather it together, share it among themselves, and at the end of the day, they will go their own way.
Why do we let them get away with it?
Because
Mr. Dafe doesn't have an answer for me. Let me talk to Tamuno. Hello, Tamuno.
Yeah, I'm here, Sandra. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Yes, I will start with a very short story. During the 2003 election, that was Obasanjo's second term, my mom was with me. She was quite old.
Okay.
And I was going out to vote in the morning, and she was like, where are you going this early morning? I said, I'm going to vote. Oh, are they voting? I said, yes. And when you go, vote for Aghogho. And I asked her, why would I vote for Aghogho? Why? And the man has been dead for 20-something years then. Hello?
Okay.
And she said, look, my friend, if it wasn't for Aghogho and free education, you will not be where you are today. I wouldn't have had the money to send your elder sister to school, and your elder sister took you up from the village and sent you to school. And that is what education does to people. Like you said, it closes the inequality gap.
Yeah.
Now, question of how can we put pressure on our government? The way it stands now, the way things are now, the people and the masses of Nigeria cannot do anything to their government. They cannot put pressure on them because the system does not allow people to choose their leaders. The electoral system is not free, it's not fair, and they know, the politicians know it, they keep it that way. If the system was such a system that you could vote out somebody who is not performing, they will sit up and they will listen to you.
Let me ask you, Tamuno, if they knew that the system would put in whoever they want anyway, why do they go to so much trouble to try to bribe you on election day? Why do they go to so much trouble to try to get as many cards as they can?
All that, Sandra, I'm going to tell you why they do it. They do it to show a semblance of the fact that there are elections. In this country, majority of the time, it is not us that determines who wins. Majority of the times. Maybe in some areas, yes. Maybe in some urban areas, yes. But majorly, they know that we have very little say in who emerges governor, who emerges president, who emerges senator. We have very little say in this. If we had a big say in it, they will sit up.
If we had a big say, they would sit up, Tamuno says. James, you're my final call, and then we'll move on. James, how do we apply pressure on government to provide better public education?
Ezekwesili. See, there can never be a social inequality. I'm sorry to say that. See, for me, I would say that if government would make, as in our daily outing, very easy for us, education would be very, very, in fact, free for the children.
What do you mean our daily outing very easy for us, James?
You are going to work, you're going around 4 a.m. in the morning, coming back around 9 p.m. in the night. What strength do you have to take care of your child? Even though the school is not there to put it, at least you're intelligent, you're brilliant to put your child together.
James, that's an entirely different conversation you're having over there. I'm talking about the government's basic responsibility towards you and your children as a Nigerian, which is provide basic quality education. If government is failing to do that, how is you being in traffic from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? I don't understand that point.
No, I'm saying that you leaving your house to work around 4 a.m. I think they can give you that grace of going to work 9 a.m. and you come back 5 or 4 a.m. You can have time for your child to teach him anything the teachers.
So again, you're outsourcing the government's work. So because the government failed in its responsibility, instead of pressuring the government to do better, you want to take on the burden of the government, James. James, thanks for calling me to share your thoughts. You know, when the show started, I told you that what the UN said about social justice is that we advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of economic status, gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, culture, or disability. We advance social justice when we remove barriers that people face because of economic status, gender, age, race, ethnicity, religion, culture, or disability. That's what the UN said about social justice. So if you just tuned in, welcome. We're talking about social justice because it's World Day of Social Justice. And I really want us to focus on the first barrier that the UN wants us to remove, the barrier that people face because of economic status. And James touched on that a bit. The barriers that people face because they are poor. Now, I've talked about education. Education is one of those tools that ensures that people stay poor. When you give your children a competitive education, it's much, much easier for them to rise out of poverty. But from the things I've talked about, we've seen how it is so much harder for the poor as far as competitive education is concerned. But that's not the only barrier. Last year, we talked a lot about multidimensional poverty. Remember when I had the representative from the UNDP on the show? Last year, we talked about that. Poverty isn't always just about how much money somebody has in their bank. Poverty is also a lack of access to justice. So, for example, Takwa Bay. That's an example of poverty as a barrier to justice here in Lagos. And when I say Takwa Bay, I don't mean only Takwa Bay. I'm talking about the over 20 other communities that were affected since December. We had the Navy come in. We had them start demolishing whole communities. And the reason the Navy gave was they were sabotaging pipelines and siphoning product. The entire communities, they were sabotaging pipelines. Everybody, you and I know that that is impossible. There is no way an entire community can be involved in a crime. There is no way even half a community is involved in a crime. Yet, the Navy did that. And when the people of those communities turned to the Lagos State government for assistance, what happened? The Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, LASEMA, said it would not provide relief for them because their property was destroyed as a result of crime. You remember that? Again, all of them? Could you imagine the same thing happening in Ikoyi? Could you imagine it happening in Lekki Phase 1? And these are communities that lived in those places for generations. And you know what the state government said? The state government said they don't have papers to prove that they have a right to be on that land. So let's talk about papers. Let's talk about C of O. Let's talk about deed of conveyance. We all know that these things cost an arm and a leg to obtain. Poor people do not have the money to get C of O's on their own land. That's why most poor communities or traditional communities do not have land papers. Apart from the cost, those papers take a lot of time to get and a lot of lobbying to get. Even average income Nigerians like you and I often do not have the time, the money, or the connections to perfect land documents. Is it now poor indigents of Takwa Bay that will pull it off? But yet, because they are too poor and too disconnected to secure land papers, one day government can demolish their entire community and say they don't have papers. That's because there is a justice gap between the rich and the poor. That's because there is no social justice. Before Takwa Bay, it was Otodobame. That one was not the Navy. That one was the Lagos State government itself. A whole community destroyed. And last week, we talked about the demolition of so many markets here in Lagos. These are not residential areas now. These are commercial areas. These are the places where the poor go to do honest business, to make the little money that they can to feed themselves. And one day, government decides to demolish the market. They say it's because it's unsanitary, or they say it's dilapidated. We want to renovate for you. Well, we want to build a modern one. Okay, that's great. We have questions. What temporary arrangement has been made for the traders? These very poor traders to keep making a living, what arrangements have been made until the new market is ready? Has a place been kept for them? When the new market is built, will the displaced traders be given a place in it? Will they be able to afford it? In some cases, the government says the market was built without approval. Okay, fine. We have questions. Are the individual petty traders in the market responsible for that violation? Is there no way to correct that violation without displacing these people and putting them out of business? Is our government fair to the poor in its policies, do you think? Is enough attention paid to the rights of the poor? Is enough attention paid to the impact of policies on the poor? How do we get government to be more respectful of the poor and their rights? So the first question I've asked on the show today, how do we put pressure on government to provide quality education? And then the second question, how do we get government to be more respectful of the poor and their rights? 01277 0993, 01277 1993, 01277 2993, and 01277 3993. There's WhatsApp. Send me a WhatsApp message as well. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. I am Sandra Ezekwesili. It's 28 minutes past 5.
Hard Facts will be right back. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
On Hard Facts today, it's World Day of Social Justice. It's a day that the United Nations set aside to raise awareness about the growing need for social justice in the world. And when we started the show, I told you that the UN says that social justice is when we remove barriers that people face because of their economic status, because of their gender, because of their age, because of their race, because of their ethnicity, because of their religion, their culture, or a disability. So this fight for social justice is a fight to ensure that every citizen has equal access to public opportunities, public facilities, no matter how much money where you get to or you no get, no matter whether you are a girl or you are a boy, no matter whether you are a baby or you be old person or somewhere in between old and young, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your place of origin, no matter waiting God, which God they worship or you know they worship, no matter whether you are physically disabled or not, everybody should have the same opportunities, access to the same opportunities, and everybody should have the same rights. And the theme this year is closing the inequalities gap to achieve social justice. Now, one of the ways to close the inequalities gap is education. Whose job is it to close the inequalities gap? Government. And the first way that government is supposed to close the inequalities gap is to use education. And I've told you that education is expensive. You get what you pay for, garbage in, garbage out. The best and the brightest teachers will only teach where they're paid properly. And then the ones that, cannot be, you don't care how the teachers are or who they are or what they do. You just put them in front of a class and they're teaching the children garbage. And so what we have are people who are unemployable, people who cannot compete globally. And all of that is because government has failed to provide basic education that is quality. In a lot of developed climes, what you have happening is government providing at least primary education. Some people provide secondary education, quality stuff. How do we apply pressure on government in Nigeria to provide better public education? Why is the government not investing enough in education? Is the problem that we, as Lagosians, as Nigerians, are very quick to say, let's help each other out, like Peter Monze called in and said. Or let's start work later so that we can also teach our children in the house, as James Darwin called in and said. Or we studied in the 60s with marble and slate and we sat on the floor. So at least these ones have a classroom and at least they're learning something. They should be determined. God will smile on them. Are we too permissive of nonsense? How do we apply pressure on government to provide better public education? And then we moved on from that, and I told you about poverty itself, economic status, the barriers that people face because they are poor. We talked about one of those barriers, giving your children competitive education. It is so much harder for the poor people to do. And then we talked about multidimensional poverty. Because poverty is not always how much money you have in the bank. It's also a lack of access to justice. And then I gave you examples of people who have not had access to justice. Takwabe, Otodogbame, and all of these people have suffered things that they shouldn't have suffered. And I asked you how we get government to be more respectful of the poor and their rights. I told you as well about markets that the government wakes up one day and say, oh, it's not sanitary. Oh, it wasn't properly put up. It wasn't properly set up. Oh, this, oh, that. That's why we have to knock it down. What provisions were made for the poor? is our government fair to the poor in its policies? Is enough attention paid to the rights of the poor? Is enough attention paid to the impact of policies on the poor? Why is this the case if you say it's not happening? How do we get government to be more respectful of the poor and their rights? 01277 0993. So many questions. I'm the woman with the questions. I'm always asking questions. And I need you to answer me because this Nigerian, me and you get her. Last, me and you get her. And as soon as we can start asking and answering the right questions, I think that perhaps things can begin to change. And that's why I'm asking you how. So please try to refrain from saying, oh, this government is terrible. We know. I've spent the first 37 minutes of the show telling you how terrible. Tell me how we get it to change. Tell me how we get it to stop. Olumiwa is in Aja. Hello, Olumiwa. Thanks for calling me.
Sandra, good evening.
Good evening.
I stay with your program because I discovered that you are highly intelligent, so I don't waste my time, and I appreciate your intelligence.
Thank you.
You see, I'm a product of missionary school. I went to missionary school in the 80s.
Okay.
Do you know that after 20 years, I went back to most of those schools? Missionary school, they have abandoned those schools for the poor, and the church built new one with flower and AC, with big school fees for children of the rich. So, I don't want to even talk from the government for now. We are a religion country.
Okay.
Even the religion that collect part and offering from me, that I even pay labor, I use my head to carry popcorn.
Yes, but Olumiwa, you are a sovereign country. As a sovereign country, it's not the job of the church to educate you. It's a job of your state.
This is the point I'm trying to make.
No, you're not making that point. You're criticizing the religious bodies for not giving you free education because you're poor.
Let me make this point in a simple way.
Okay.
I think those that were leaders, both religion and politician leaders, they purposely make us poor and illiterate so that they can control us.
Okay. How do we get it to stop? Because if you don't give somebody your mumu button, they will not take it. How do we take our mumu button back?
It is so unfortunate.
Unfortunate, Olumiwa says. All right, let me talk to Jonathan in Badagry. Hello, Jonathan. Hello? Jonathan's not there anymore. Hello?
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. This is Emmanuel calling from Oshun.
Emmanuel, go ahead.
Okay. You have brought a very important topic to bear. What I can see is that we Nigerians, we are too fearful. We used to be afraid of little things. If we can conduct a massive protest or revolution, so much that it will attract the attention of the international news, they will be afraid. All these policemen, they used to scare people. If they see massive people in tune of 100,000 marching on the street, they will not have any other choice. And the people the people at the helms of affairs, I know they will be in their house or offices watching it in the news or watching it on the television. They will be afraid.
Now, what will the demand be? Because it's not enough to say, oh, let's all come out. But what are we demanding when we come out?
The demand is a total makeover, total restructuring. Because this is not the Nigeria we used to know. A total restructuring. That's what our demand will be.
All right, thanks for calling me. A total restructuring, he says. Will that be the answer? Do you think that answers our problem? Because before we move to the national, we have to start at the local. Eh? So you come to a state like Lagos, and I'm sure that there are people in Lagos who feel like, now we get Lagos, therefore anybody else na newcomer. Abi, anybody else will come Lagos, suppose they beg for anything where he gets. Suppose they grateful for anything where he get for this Lagos. Abi? So when we say restructuring, will restructuring answer our question, answer our prayers? Is that the answer? Is it? Is it? Let me talk to Jacobson. Jacobson is, I can't read that. Hello, Jacobson. Welcome.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for welcoming me.
Thank you too.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I've been listening to your discussion and that's been an interesting exposure.
Okay.
But to the issue of how to pressure government, that they will have a change of heart and then maybe have a little relative social equality. Although I know we can't have 100% social equality anywhere, no ideal situation exists. So we can do that through electoral reform.
Okay.
Then through civil society groups and social awareness.
Okay.
Campaigns anyway, be it jingles, radio stations can help, the media. But you see, there's not enough sensitization towards those facets of our society that makes society improve or even develop. We all are just dancing to the gallery, looking for the latest news, the breaking news. But those social facets that join the fabric together, we are not interested in that because it's like humanitarian service, non-profitable.
Jacobson, thanks for calling me. Let me talk to Dominic. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Dominic. How do we put pressure on government to make education better? How do we get government to respect the rights of the poor?
Yeah, to some extent, my opinion will be that, something happened in Bolivia, but I don't know how true that is.
Okay.
The citizens protest against the wrong governance. So I think the police were sent to go and, kick them out of the road. Police getting there, they joined the protest. You get? So when they joined the protest, the army also joined the protest. So the president has no any other option but to flee the country. Okay? So if there is unity, I understand the principles of unity. If a country, come together and say, okay, this is what we want. If you're staying there in 4 years, you can't give us this, we vote you out.
Now, let me ask you, Dominic. What's the one thing? Because, all the time when we talk about this, people will tell you things like, Nigerians, we can never be united. They separate us with religion, with ethnicity, all of that. Tell me, Dominic, what's the one thing that you would say that most Nigerians have in common, irrespective of where they come from or which God they worship? What's the one thing you think we can unite behind?
Well, if you said that, if you take a look at the East, they have what they're looking for. The North, they will demand for a different thing. The South, they will also demand for a different thing.
No, but I don't want us to look at it from like a geopolitical zone. I'm talking about us as individual Nigerians. Is there something that you think all of us can unite behind?
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Can I tell you this?
Yeah.
The typical demand Nigerians will demand for will be steady electricity.
Okay.
Because when there's steady electricity, development will come into a country.
So with electricity,
Investors will come.
With stable electricity, Dominic, you're saying nobody can tell us that this one is Igbo, that one is Hausa, this one is Muslim, that one is Christian, Abi? Because all of us need light.
No. What I'm trying to say is, if there's steady electricity, the country will grow gradually. If
I agree with you.
comes in and said, okay, I'm going to give steady electricity for 4 years and I'll rule and I'm out. Someone else comes in, I'm going to fix the educational system for 4 years and does that and is out.
No, but here's the thing, Dominic. A lot of people have come in several times and said, I will give electricity. And then they stay for 8 years. And then we hail them as elder statesmen.
Okay, so that boiled down to what I'm saying. That after 4 years, you couldn't perform. What are you still there doing?
How do we get even their supporters to unite behind this man said he will give us electricity? He did not give us electricity. Let's vote her out.
Well, I think it's boiled down on poverty.
Dominic, thanks for calling me. Because see, you and I can talk from now till tomorrow. I like to talk. We can talk from now till tomorrow. But you see, if we don't find that one thing that unifies us, that we can say is injustice, if we cannot find that one thing where we can all relate to, I don't think we will solve the number of problems we face as a people. Let me talk to Mr. Idowu, then I'll go to WhatsApp. Mr. Idowu, hello. Hello, Mr. Idowu. He's not there anymore. All right, so let's go to WhatsApp. Sandra Shore protested and was detained. Okay, all Nigerians should have downed tools until there is an arm twisting of the government. But we all went on to our individual lives with business as usual until all or most Nigerians can unite, down tools as long as necessary, like has been observed in other parts of the world and very recently in Hong Kong, confront the Nigerian government with a united front. We may never have a say in our affairs. When there seem to be trouble breaking out, all Nigerians scamper to safety. This is our undoing. Sandra, I get your point. I stand with you. Thanks for your resolve. One day, your point will really get in. Okay. We have more messages coming in. Sandra, your standpoint of actionable plans seems like an uphill task for Nigerians to grasp. I hope you continue to stand firm and not waver in the Nigeria that we can attain. All right, Edibo, thank you for sending that message in. If our labor leaders compromise, that means that we are finished. We can put pressure on the government to fund education by calling on trade union, NLC, and others to protest for bad governance. Okay. All right. Let's see more messages that we can take off of WhatsApp. WhatsApp, by the way, is 080-959-75805. Good evening, Sandra. About the uniting factors, I think football and music. Okay. Football and music, this person says. Are they the answer? Is that the answer? Football and music? Is there something we could do with that? He says, those are our greatest unifying weapons of sensitization. That's Precious from Elijah. Now, how do we use football and music as tools to attain social justice? How do we use those as tools to get the Nigeria that we all desire? I don't know. We have Emmanuel who says the only thing that he knows that unifies us in Nigeria is football. Okay. And then somebody says, until we begin to see and treat ourselves as one, nothing positive will be achieved. How do we begin to do that? Because here, human beings will always break off into like cliques. From primary school, everybody did their clique, right? Secondary school, everybody's in their cliques. But there has to be something that I can recognize in my Tiv neighbor, in my Calabar neighbor, in my Igbo neighbor, in my Hausa neighbor, in my Kanuri neighbor, in my Ebonyi neighbor, in my Yoruba neighbor, in my Kwara neighbor, in my Adamawa neighbor. There's something that all of us have in common. Before we remember where we're from and what language we speak and which God we worship or which God we don't worship, before we remember all of that, there has to be something. And that's why I loved that thing that Dominic said, electricity. We all don't have it. We're all suffering as a result of not having it. Why is it, difficult to unite behind that one problem and solve it? Why do you think? Why do you think? It's one problem, right? It's one of those problems where nobody will come and tell you, I hope. I don't know if anybody could come and tell you, I hope. That is one part of the country that caused the other to cause the whole country to be in darkness. Or is that religion? People of that religion that made us all be? No, we're all in darkness, all of us. So is there a way for something like, demanding for education at least? Demanding for education at least. Is there a way for that to be twisted into a political matter, into an ethnic matter? Isn't access to education something we all want? Won't my child and your child and all our children want to have children who are better educated? Let me go back to WhatsApp where we have more messages pouring in. The only thing that brings us together, somebody else says, is... I've missed that message. Okay, let me go to somebody else. If we have... No, let me not take that message. We have another one. Educated Nigerians should be in the forefront of agitation for more investment in education and also get somebody educated at least to know his rights. To know at least his right is education. Okay, Emmanuel, I'm not sure I understand that message, but thanks for sending it. Let's see. We've got another one here and says, most Nigerians don't know what we are lacking as a people. How can they demand what they are lacking when we don't even know that we are lacking? This is where our weapons of sensitization comes in. I doubt that Nigerians don't know what we're lacking, to be very honest. I mean, now all of us, they darkness. Now all of us, they see children when they beg for road, when they supposed they for school. Now all of us, they see, so I don't think we don't know what the problems are. I don't think so. Ojo Lucky from Farah Park Estate says, the answer could have been through voting in the right leaders, but it's unfortunate that politicians disappoint us after they get what they want from us. Politicians must always be held responsible for their words, even after they've been elected. Now, why don't we do more of that, do you think? Let's say, for instance, that, the elections are already rigged. They know that they cannot do anything about it. Okay. Why is it that we cannot hold them accountable while they're in there? I'm talking about that now as a solution for pressuring politicians to give to provide better basic education, to have more respect for the rights of the poor, right? How come holding them accountable isn't something that we all do more of? How come we have people who obviously see where politicians are erring? Like, politicians goof again and again and again. Very obvious goof. But you have people who will die on top of their matter and say, when my own brother was there, you two, what were you doing? It's his turn. Let it be another person's turn. She did it. She too, she can do her own. Because if you say, the problem is that, the electoral process is not trustworthy, the electoral process is not great, how about holding the politician accountable after they are in there? How are you using your voice? These are questions that we all need to answer. And I hope that you realize for yourself what social justice means to you. And I hope that you can look around Lagos and you can recognize the areas where you see a lack of social justice. If you look around Nigeria, I'm sure you'll see plenty areas where you see a lack of social justice. And I hope that we can all do something about it eventually. This one says, Sandra Mbok, social equity is difficult to achieve in Nigeria. Mayor Inaja says, my WhatsApp keeps dropping out. I don't know why that happens. Okay, let me try to use the WhatsApp on the laptop, like the web WhatsApp. So I'm going to switch mics in case you hear something weird happening in the studio. I'm just switching mics. Okay, so here we have this person who says, can we take away biases and stand together to hold leaders accountable? Good question. Educated Nigerians have read that before. Let's see. Okay. Kayode from Ikotun says, it's just a pity that we make education Mission Impossible in Nigeria. Truly, the beautiful ones are not yet born. From records available from councillor to president, none of their kids are in in public schools. But this conversation we have all the time about their children being in private schools. We won't be having it if our own schools are great, if our own public schools are great. It shouldn't matter where their kids are, I think. We've got Fade from Houston. Fade's message hasn't come in yet, unfortunately. All right, but that's all the time I have. I hate it when that happens, right? When we run out of time. But I had a great show, and thank you for being a part of this great show. Go out there and be a champion of social justice. I'm back on your air tomorrow at 3:15. We're going to leave Nigeria. Every Friday we leave Nigeria. We take a look at what's happening globally, and we bring you a global Big Three. So join me for that. On the Big Three today, I mentioned that Stella Adadevoh got a road named after her in Abuja. Amazing stuff. I also told you that Customs says that they'll be going to supermarkets to shut them down for selling foreign rice. And I told you that Kwankwaso is also going to ask the Supreme Court to review its Kano State Guba judgment. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili on all of my social media. Lagos, those were your hard facts. Good night.
This is the news.
The news. The news. The news.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Now let's take a look at the headlines in the news. This evening, the federal government warns against rise in fake news. House of Representatives raises concerns over strange disease in Benue State. Lesotho's Prime Minister to be charged with murder of estranged wife. And in sports, Europa League returns tonight after days of Champions League football. The